So for today's conversation, we're going to be talking about the keys to succeeding with grocery in the Midwest, and with our conversation with Don Fitzgerald, who is the current co-CEO of Dom's Kitchen and Market. And through his experience, he's worked with a variety of grocers in the Midwest, from previously leading marketing and merchandising teams as a vice president at Mariano's Roundy's, working for Meijer, Safeway. So lots of really great experience in both mid-sized, large grocery, and starting the new concept of Dom's Kitchen and Market. And then for today's conversation, I have my wonderful co-host and co-interviewee, Tina. And so Tina, I'd love for you to just give a quick introduction and hello.
Hello, my name is Tina Addolfson. I'm at survey.com. We do retail merchandising at scale around the US and globally. We are more than pleased to join Food Bevy and bring the Chicago market and the Midwest to you because one of our beliefs is that regional grocers and regional differences in consumer behavior, shopping behavior is important for brands to think about as they're going through their launch and growth phases. It's our pleasure today to speak with Don, who has experience in that. And one of the things that we do is just enable that brick and mortar execution that brands need with the permission of retailers.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, so a couple logistics before we get into today's conversation. Everyone who's joining us, you'll be on mute the entire conversation, maybe until the very end. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I will ask those throughout the conversation so we make sure they're topically relevant. If there's anything that's a little off topic, you can feel free to write that in the chat as well, and we'll just get to that question a little bit later so it flows with the conversation. At the end, if we have time, we'll open it up to other general questions as well and invite you to hop on screen to ask that question directly to Don or Tina or myself. All right, perfect. So with that, the last thing, this conversation will be recorded as well, and we'll be sending out a recording to everyone after the fact as well, in case there's anything that you miss. All right, Don, so first off, I'd love for you to just give a quick overview of what you're doing at Dom's Kitchen and Market now, what the concept is, and your experience in the grocery industry.
Great. Thank you, Jordan, Tina, and the cast of thousands that are on this call. I appreciate you investing the time, and hopefully there's a couple of takeaways for both of us, quite frankly, from the conversation. So as you mentioned, I'm co-CEO of Dom's Kitchen and Market, this startup in Lincoln Park with Bob Mariano as a co-CEO and Jay Owen, co-founder of the concept. And what we're really trying to do is reinvent again what the grocery industry from our perspective, and really, it's about a couple of things: reinventing the corner store that a lot of us grew up knowing, and not the same products, obviously, but that feeling, that place in the neighborhood that the corner store represented. We're also looking to reinvent the meal occasion, how folks shop for meals. And this all started, and we can talk about it, pre-pandemic, right? So it's two and a half years ago. The world changed a lot, but we're almost back to the future, if you will, in terms of where our idea came from. And that was this reimagining the meal occasion and how we fuse together a perishable market in a neighborhood with, we didn't call it this at the time, but a kitchen, which is preparing high quality prepared foods. And with the idea that the shopper, the guest, could use Dom's Kitchen and Market multiple times a week, right? It could be a place to shop for a meal. It could be a place to get the ingredients you need for a meal, be it the perishable products or items from the kitchen, and you put that together. It's a place that you could socialize and hang out in the neighborhood, and it's a place that, while we won't know everybody's name, a lot of people will know their name because of the frequency with which they come into Dom's.
I love that. And talk about what the experience is like a little bit for a consumer walking into the store, because it's not just like a normal kind of grocery store or even neighborhood market.
Yeah, our goal here, Jordan, was to really set off right away that this isn't a grocery store. It's not a grocerant, which we were called back in, prior days. This is something that you kind of look and wonder what exactly is going on here, which is an asset and something we have to continue to work on and have people understand, really what you can do inside the kitchen and market. So you come in and you see an expo kitchen right in the center of the store. And we think about that as really the heart and soul of what Dom's is all about. This expo kitchen, you see preparation going on. You're visually impacted with product being made. And folks, again, they're not behind the kitchen. They're right there out in front engaging you. And around that, so around the heart is surrounded by a perishable market with great produce, salumi and cheese, a charcuterie. We've got something that's we call the brew, playing both ends of the spec day part. Right in the morning, it's brewed coffee. In the evening, brewed craft beer and wine for, again, socializing. We've got a curated bakery. It's sort of a bazaar of great local suppliers under one roof. So names folks might recognize: Molly's Cupcakes, Stan's Donuts, La Fournette, Sweet Things, Big Fat Cookies, Banchi Pizzas in the kitchen. So we kind of look at this as a place that the shopper would typically navigate all around town to find these items, come under Dom's roof, and we've curated these products for you. So all the way around, we have the perishable market. We've got a wine library, which it'll be a pandemic story in a bit in terms of we haven't completed that yet because we're still waiting on equipment, but that's another topic. And then a curated pantry, Jordan, which is probably interesting to a lot of the folks on this call. We saw where the puck was moving pre-pandemic and where a lot of the online purchasing was going, where, fulfillment from the mass merchants or the big retailers. We didn't want to play in that game. We wanted to create this pantry of discovery of curated, local, specialty, natural, organic items that gave you a reason to come to the store for that experience and the discovery of the items that we've curated for the shopper. And then lastly, there's probably 80 to 90 seats, depending on how you count it, for where guests can sit. We've got a greenhouse, skylight greenhouse, and then outside we call it the front yard, and on the back end, the backyard, that folks can enjoy their meal, that they can reserve for a special occasion, a celebration. We're really looking forward to college football starting, and people reserving the backyard for college football Saturday, or it could be a wedding, it could be a birthday.
I love that, and just how personalized that is. Like, it feels like home. It feels like you're going to a friend's house for that part of the event. And currently there's just one store, correct?
There's one. We're in hot pursuit of number 2. And then, we've said publicly over the next 5-6 years, we'd like to be in the 20 range. But this was all developed during the pandemic virtually. And you asked me as you're coming on, how's it going? Well, you have to build the car and then start it up and see how it runs. So we want to really work on honing Dom's before, and again, relevant to some of the questions later, and how fast you run, right? You got to, whether it's a product or a brand or a retailer or a hybrid, you have to be careful. You have to nurture, and that's what we're going to do here with Dom's. And it's interesting you say about the hominess feel. Well, as we were going down the road, it was Dom's market and kitchen, Jordan, but we felt like when you hit that market in your mind, you framed exactly, okay, I know what a market is. When you say it's kitchen first, it's like, what's kitchen? Kitchen usually feels pretty good, unless you're in there toiling away and you don't like to do that. But typically it's going to lead to a meal. It's going to lead to occasion. It's going to lead to family. It's a restaurant, it has a kitchen. So there was intent in changing the flow of the name.
No, I really appreciate that. And I'm guessing too, the changing direction of kind of grocery in the space as well. And, more focus on quick serve coming up here. So that's interesting. I want to take a step back. Tina, I know you and I have been talking a lot about just like what the retail landscape looks like in Chicago and the Midwest. I'd love for you just to share some of your thoughts and learnings, and then we can get Don's perspective on that as well.
Absolutely. The one thing that stands out is that Chicago really loves their food, and there's a variety, more than having a few couple of choices that you go to. There's just a range. So if you want to go someplace where you can get Indian food, there are those expert markets. If you want to go someplace that has either, great bargains, Aldi's has thought Chicago is a big market for them, but you also have the corner stores, what is equivalent to a bodega in New York, where you can get very specialty food. The organic market is definitely growing, but maybe not with every hot trend that makes it in Los Angeles or in New York. So the variety is interesting, and that's where our approach to things, where we think that every manufacturer, every brand fights that battle on the shelf at each individual geography, retailer, and your category. So that triangle defines the battle on the shelf. And we believe in micro execution. Most people believe in micro targeting, and we allow you that flexibility to be the right type of product for that shopper in that retailer. The other thing that we're seeing is some retailers are leaning towards discovery, and they would like that kind of information. They would like the information on the product, information on how to use the product, recipes, demos where you get to sample it. And then there are others that are more about your weekly shop, your maybe a bargain, maybe something to invite trial by doing buy one, get one free, or buy two, get a third one free. So playing with that retailer strategy because they understand their shopper, and partnering with the retailer in approaching your shopper is really key.
I love that. And then Don, what's been your experience with kind of like, how would you describe the Midwest landscape of grocery?
Really tough. And so the wrinkles on my face are from 40 plus years of competing in this environment. And I would say that the retailers in the Midwest are very good. They, to Tina's point, they understand that people love food here in Chicago and really are aggressive at trying to meet that need. And you have a lot of terrific competition in the market that is trying to serve that need. So it's tough. I would say there, to Tina's point, there's the range obviously, and your point, Tina, about understanding the retailer and what's driving them and how you connect and how your product fits into their go-to-market strategy is critical. Because some people are going to love to hear, some retailers will love to hear that story about your origin and how you farm and how you package, and others just want it's functional. They really just want to sell it at the the lowest point in the market. So it's a very diverse market, Jordan, and in Chicago the neighborhoods are different. Even for us, as we think about Downs at 18,000 square feet. What we do in Lincoln Park is one thing. What we do in other locations around the city has to be different. People are particular about their food, and frankly, if you don't differentiate, I can go anywhere and get these items, right? And I can have it e-com to my, Amazon can have it to my house. I can click and collect, Kroger, Walmart. So it depends what your strategy is, but Chicago is a very diverse city, and you have to be aware and in tune to what shoppers are looking for.
So Don, that variety sometimes makes it difficult for a brand to decide where to start first. Do you have any recommendations for either a Chicago-based or a brand that's expanding into Greater Chicago? Where would they first start to kind of tap into that Chicago foodie shoppers market?
Yeah, I think I would try to align the attributes of the brand or the product that I have with the retailer that most fits with those attributes, right? And there, and I think that if you can get that relationship with the retailer to do some data sharing about who their shopper is and aligning your brand with that, I think you have a better chance. For example, if there's a if there's a natural specialty product on this call and you're going to one of the big retailers, they may define that in their category strategies. Well, that's a profit enhancer, right? Well, that may not be the best thing for what I'm trying to do with my particular brand, is become the item that's used to create margin to sell Tide cheap, which I know how to do really well, or Cheerios. So that's a misalignment, Tina. And I think really, and it's not always possible, but doing the homework and trying to align what your brand is trying to achieve versus what the retailer is about, I think would be a good first place to start.
I agree. One of the things that is a follow-up on this session is a resource guide to the Greater Chicago retailers, so that any brand that is either thinking about it or thinking about what's their next step after they started with, for example, a natural specialty, that they can continue on and grow. Aside from retailers selecting that brand that is part of their assortment, what recommendations would you have for the brand has started, the founder has 7 favorite flavors, and they come to you, whether, you can, what would be your answer both at Dom's or at, when you were previously at Mariano, like going through like the different places that you've been, what would be your answer when the incredibly excited founder comes with 7 flavors?
First, I would say that their passion for their product can make a difference. So don't ever lose that, right? I mean, where you're at in the life cycle of your product, it's made a difference. When you had asked me in the past, about some particular products, and really what's a difference maker is those folks that really haven't lost that passion. So, but on the other hand, that passion for 7 items is probably too much too quick. So bridle your passion, channel your passion, but don't let it overtake you. I think I would try to crawl, walk, and run, get some wins, learn about that retailer, learn about the kind of things that can happen to you, but working with a retailer, but take your best shot. There's somebody in Chicago who I was doing a little consulting work for, and they were hedging on which they were just coming to retail with a particular product. They were hedging on which one they should bring, and they were going to go of your 7 flavors. They were of the lesser before they brought the real winner. Go with your best shot first. Go with your best shot and build off that and focus. And don't try to take too big of a bite of the apple right out of the box, because those opportunities don't come very often. You don't want to fumble it because you're trying to do 7 versus I did 3 really right versus I got 7 in, and now it's like, well, now what do I do? I've seen that a lot, Tina. It's a good question.
And let's say that I do get in my favorite 4, so 1 from every family member and my best friend.
Yeah.
What are the best ways? What have you seen work as far as communicating with the shopper and really getting, once you get on shelf, you want to fly off the shelf, right? What is working? What do you see really working with the Chicago shopper?
Yeah, I mean, I think connecting with them fairly personally is what's working in a lot of cases. Now, for us, you can do that. It's a 1-store startup here, and you can be in store talking about, your coffee, your craft beer, your snack, and that works really well, because I think, to your earlier point, communicating that authenticity, that interest in food, the passion that Chicago has for food, making that connection. So you can't do it one-on-one all the time, but what are those other methods that you can do, right? So are there pop-up occasions where, there are larger, where there's larger groups, and you're at the farmer's market, you're at an event, and I'm getting some exposure and I have a chance to build demand outside. Retailers at various levels of sophistication. The most sophisticated can look at the profile of your product and who the shoppers are that are currently buying products that are similar, and let's either give them a coupon, let's load it on in their loyalty account, on their e-com order, let's put a sample in. So touching the shoppers, and being, not being a big brand, right? Being the anti-big brand, I think will work to get the ball rolling. And again, there's different methodologies to do that.
And Don, like once kind of following up on Tina's question there, like if a brand's on shelf, how much can they do like in the store, just based on your previous experience with some of the larger companies too? Like what can you do in the store to drive sales? Or do you really see the biggest opportunity to build that awareness outside of store to drive them in there versus trying to win on shelf there?
Yeah, I still am an in-store believer, Jordan. At the point of purchase there, there's a lot of wins, and so there's obviously the sampling. Some will allow for point of sale information at the shelf, and that goes from the very old school handwritten sign, which works in some cases, to with us. We've opened with electronic shelf tags, which have the ability to deploy near field communication, where you can take your iPhone and walk up to the ESL, the electronic shelf tag, and that will tell you the story about the product. So there's a range. I think the other opportunity, Jordan, is what is the retailer's agenda that they want to drive that your product can tie into, right? So let's just say you're a curated local honey. Well, the retailer really wants to drive their cheese sales. How do I get on their agenda and help them drive what they're trying to do by bringing your product in? So you're tying in and leveraging their focus. You can always do the price promotion in the store, Jordan. There's no real finesse to that, but for a brand trying to make their way with a 20-cent reduction in a shelf tag, it's probably not. Getting awareness is difficult, because like where shoppers are now, they're very functional in their shopping. So just putting a price reduction, I wouldn't say that's the best way. It can get a little bit of trial, but it's not the best way to connect.
How important is that story, not only to the buyer, but also to the shopper? I know there's certain retails that, for example, a Whole Foods, where they really want to highlight the local, in each region, the local founders, the local products. How important is it that it is female founder, underrepresented founder, someone who had a child that was allergic and this product is allergic? How does that play in to the retailer stories?
I think it's, Tina, the importance level will change based on what the retailer is trying to do. However, I think you even see the largest retailers in the country, focusing on local and these stories and giving back and connecting with the community, because it's a point of differentiation. It's different than just functionally sitting here like we are and clicking my Amazon order and it's delivered. So there's varying degrees, but it's increasingly important across all levels of retail. The one thing I would say, though, you can't, I am as much in favor of these stories and helping folks and entrepreneurs and hunger. But the thing you have to remember is that the retailers also needs to be profitable and generate sales. So how do I tell that story about who I am? But I also sell, because a retailer can't, I don't mean to sound cold, but I can't have a store full of great stories and nothing to pay my employees with, nothing to grow my company to store 2, store 3, store 4. So I think it's very important, but the sales, how I'm contributing to your, for-profit business through what I do, I think that's the real win. And again, I don't mean to sound like I don't care, because I really do. But a retailer is in business to sell things. How do I get those stories out? Help you? How do I help grow the community? How do I help grow the entrepreneur? And to do that, if the entrepreneur or the story, if they're not moving bottles, cans, boxes, then the future is not there. So
And I think I like the reality of like, yeah, thinking about the goals of the retailer, right? Because they have to make money, and a lot of brands don't necessarily understand how a retailer thinks about the store and revenue. And so, like, Kate had a question of like the cheese example that you gave.
yep,
It's a honey brand. You probably would never know that the cheese department is trying to really push more product, or the store is trying to do so. So, what are some of those goals that stores generally have throughout the year? And then as a brand, how can you learn about that? And then what ways can you participate?
sure, yeah. So not to be retailer 101, retail 101, Jordan, but really, the old adage is that, sales cures a lot of ills, right? So we've got fixed expense, we've got increasing healthcare, just like everybody, healthcare costs. We've got, so right now, look at it, right? So commodities are up, supply is tough, labor is tight, hiring is difficult, the market is competitive. So on a retailer's mind, always is driving the top line sales, because I can figure out how to turn the dials in the rest of the P&L. If I don't have sales, I can turn the margin, I can increase my percent, but if I don't have sales, all right, it's another 5% on less sales. So sales is extremely important. Customer count or customer transaction count, very important. And more sophisticated retailers will get into the sort of the segmentation through their loyalty data of I just don't have 1,000 customers, I've got X loyal customers, and those loyal customers are hanging in there, or I'm turning more than I would like. So you need sales, and you need customers in the store, and you need loyal customers in the store to optimize. And then obviously profit, gross margin, critical for retailers to pay the bills. And then depending on the retailer's capital structure, working capital is very important too, right? So my earlier point that if you're a startup like us, everybody's got fixed capital, right? But as a startup like us, we've got fixed capital to work with. And while I love your story and I love your product, it's sitting on the shelf, and and I'm carrying that cost, right? That I'm carrying that inventory cost. So depending on who the retailer is, optimizing your working capital is very important as well. And then ultimately, retailers will really boil down to the, what their four-wall EBITDA is. So what is the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization? When it's all said and done, what kind of cash flow am I generating to keep our business alive?
So Don, I don't think you sound at all cold. I think you sound incredibly focused. And stories are great, but one of the best stories that is told is through data.
Right.
Now, allowing a brand to know what is working for them, right? So that it's not just a program that they do, but they actually get that feedback of how big was the sales lift, or how many people tried it. How much data do you share with your vendors?
Historically, we have shared a lot, Tina. We're in our infancy in our development of gathering, but as we progress, and 30, I think we're at like 38 days now. Once we get our arms around that data, we will share, because we want to partner in success, mutual success for both of us. And I think part of that is also the retailer's very busy on a lot of things, and the brand is busy but focused fairly myopically on growing their brand, right? So we need to understand the story, right? You can easily overlook the great story that's happening over there in the spice aisle, or in the dairy. So I think data, really levels the playing field from what perceptions might be versus what's really occurring. So, sharing that data back and forth, really having a common source of truth between us, right? I mean, for us to be good business partners, we need to be looking at the same, how are we defining our gross margin? How are we defining our sales? So sharing that data gives us a common source of the truth to build our business together.
Thank you. One of the questions that came in from the chat is, we've had a year and a half of not traveling, not having trade shows, or maybe some virtual ones. But for the ones that didn't already have a network, how do you recommend that they start having that conversation and relationship with the buyers? Where do you find the new brands that you're bringing into DOMS?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We were a lot hampered without the great shows that our industry holds, that being canceled. So we did a lot of outreach ourselves. I think I see Natalie on here. We connected with the hatchery. Frankly, we looked at other retailers and restaurants, right? And that was one that was beneficial for us in the pandemic. Some brands came to us that otherwise wouldn't sell to retailers, because they needed another source of distribution because food service was shut down. So which I think was a good learning in terms of diversification for some of these suppliers and brands. So we do a lot of discovery, a lot of local connections, and then really, frankly, still, even there's not a show, still talking to the large specialty food distributors and then smaller local distributors of, okay, there's not a show, but what can you tell us? And they are a great intermediary, for bringing us ideas and assortment.
For a new brand who wants to get in touch with either DOMS or from your experience with like Mariano's Roundies, like is there a way, like an inbound process that they can reach out to you? Is it kind of going to the store and talking with the local store manager to introduce your products? There's lots of Whole Foods stories of like going to talk to a Whole Foods buyer and then they introduce you to the regional buyers and getting in that way. What's been kind of your experience and like what actions they can take on their own?
Yeah, I'd say the best. Well, so for us, on our Dom Chicago website, you can send us an email, and that's where we're getting a lot of our inquiries. I think talking at the store, I would not advise unless it is a one store entrepreneur who's in that store doing all the buying, because you can get lost there, right? So the store director or the assistant manager is really excited about this product, and then they get busy, or it's given to a category manager or a vice president who's in the store, and they're like, okay, here, I'll follow up, and they'll put that card in your pocket, and it never goes anywhere, right? So I think finding the way to the category manager or the specialty foods natural contact with the retailer is the best way to go, Jordan. And then I think, I would, and also looking for where those retailers are doing their outreach, where they're going to be, I think is another place to make, again, that personal connection now that we can do that. But I think the best way is to get to the decision maker in the buying office, as opposed to trying to work store by store, unless there's smaller, like I said, entrepreneurs.
So which of the trade shows that are coming up are on your radar and should be on the radars of the founders that are really trying to expand right now?
Sure. So the specialty food, so Fancy Food Show in New York, the Expo East, Expo West would be, good places to be exposed. IDDBA is another good one. The IDDBA show, the Deli Bakery Show is another good one. And then I think there's some really fine, I think KE and UNFI do some great shows on their own that, that I've found productive in the past.
I'm glad you mentioned them. What do you see the role of distributors to be as things are changing and evolving and discovery is more important? how is their role changing?
Yeah, I think that it can be a bit of a love-hate relationship with brands and distributors. There's certainly a cost there, but I would say that given the choice, I would use a distributor of some nature for a lot of reasons. They know some of these questions you're asking about retailers, they know it. They have that answer. They know who's making the decision. They know how the game is played. They know what the retailer is trying to do, because maybe they were in their top to top, and they heard these things like, oh, one of our objectives is to really, you know, retailer A could say, well, all my center store groceries going away to, Amazon and Walmart and Kroger click and collect. I'm really trying to push the perishables. How can you help me with that? Distributor hears that, they can come back and help you with connect that honey and cheese idea, right? I think they also, it's really hard if you're fortunate to get with a larger supplier to get to all the stores and make sure you're still on shelf with a shelf tag and have the facings that you were promised. That as a retailer, we never like to see an empty spot on the shelf, right? And even as hard as we try to say where discipline is, we're going to leave it open so that, we know what's out. Oh, here comes Tina and Jordan. I got to make it look good. Cover it up. I age myself because one time I told somebody that story and I said, that's a Watergate. And they're like, what is Watergate? I heard about that, in history class, but what are you talking about? Anyway, cover up, right? So a distributor can help you maintain that position. They know what's going on, and there you become a little bit bigger fish in their portfolio than just walking into some retailers and you're a small fish. And I think that the distributors can help you through that. I know there's a cost, but the other thing is, quite frankly, what we're dealing with is we're all direct store delivery, and if we have too many one-off deliveries in receiving, it's logistically very, very difficult for us. You could risk, let's say you get a lot of individual deliveries. If your process isn't good, you could risk losing invoices, right? Where if it comes on a distributor, it's all there and you get paid. For some, cash flow is important for everybody, right? And if that gets lost in the shuffle. So we're trying to do some consolidation so that we're efficient through the back door as opposed to a lot of individual deliveries. That's efficient for the retailer.
Do you have preferred distributors that you're working with at DOMS?
Yeah, so we're working heavily with KeHE, also with UNFI, and then there's a couple more local. Jordan Newman is locally as well.
Okay. Are you working with Pod Foods?
We are doing a bit with Pod. Yes.
Some with them. Okay. So I know that's been on the mind of a lot of brands as well.
Yep.
And then from your experience with in kind of managing and working with like buyers, so a lot of like buyers, category managers at stores, they have a lot on their plate, and it's not just finding and bringing in new products, right? They're responsible for their departments or for their areas, and that's tough for a lot of brands that are just starting out and don't have a huge sales track record to be a big part. Any insights on what the buyers are really caring about and how a founder who's relatively early can build better relationships with a buyer so they can achieve, both of their goals?
Yeah, those priorities typically are top down in the organization, Jordan. So what I said about, retailers and how they're thinking, the same thing rolls down to a buyer or category manager. So the first thing they're thinking about is, I've got a budget for sales, and how do I achieve that? I've got a profit goal. So I think the way to connect with them is either, ask them directly if you can, or through your sources, through your distributor, through your network, through your your peers who are, in that particular retailer. What are they really thinking about right now, right? And then how do I help them with my product to meet the needs that are important for them, right? So, maybe somebody is saying sales, maybe another retailer is being impacted, and, hey, we've got this big initiative on how we differentiate ourselves from every other, mass retailer. Okay, I know how I can help you with that because here's my product. It is different. Here's my story. But on the other hand, if they're saying sales is my issue, then it's like, well, do you really want to put one more flavor of Cheerios in? Because what's the next flavor of Cheerios versus here's something else that I can bring to the category that's value added that will help lift your sales. So I think it's understanding where they're at as an organization, as a buyer, and then playing your story to help them achieve their goals. If they think you're just another product that's going to come on the shelf and what's it really going to do for me, you're probably not going to get their attention very much. And in this audience here, I don't think is about paying a lot of slotting or lump sum dollars. That's not who you are, right? It's not on your P&L. So it's telling your story and how it helps them achieve their goals. Yeah.
So speaking of that, and also Watergate and retailers trying to avoid that empty spot, there's every once in a while a founder is surprised by the data that we bring up, which is their best-selling SKU sold through, the retailer filled in with other flavors, and all of a sudden now you have a void. Right. And you're surprised by this because it's your best-selling flavor. Can you just kind of like explain, when you're the retailer, what is it that's really happening? And then flip side, how can you fix it? It's not always just a distributor that's the solution. Sometimes the merchandisers can do it. Brand ambassadors can do it. Demo samplings do double duty and can do it. But what is it that happens? Because it's that surprise to the founder, like, really? How did that happen?
That's a great question. It happens all the time. It happened yesterday with us, Tina, right? So for us, prepared foods is a big deal. And if you thought about prepared proteins, you'd probably think chicken might be one of the top items, and steak, and then you have salmon, and then you have pork chops, and then you have, meat. The other day I'm looking at this case and it looks full, but I was like, where's the grilled chicken, right? Where's the grilled chicken? Well, it's sold out, and now we filled in with salmon, and so it's fine. I eat salmon, but it's not the volume of grilled chicken. So it happens to us, and what we do is run reports on zero movement reports. Where has it fallen off? Where are we not showing any movement on this item? And that, again, I think is where the data sharing can be very valuable, right? And you can even spot a trend. It may not be totally gone, Tina, but all of a sudden on the 4th of July week, it's a holiday, I dipped off on my salsa sales. What that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think, but back to your point, the earlier point, buyers, category manager is busy on a lot of different things. Like, okay, how am I doing for the holiday? They're not going to look at your item and where your trend is. If you're sharing data, you're getting that data share. And it can be very sophisticated, like Walmart's portal, or maybe they just, hey, can you send me just email me my sales, every week. I'll take a look at it and feed back to you on what I'm seeing there. Just send me my daily sales and I can give you some feedback, because most of those buyers or category managers will, that's where there's a common agenda for yourself as a brand and the buyer and the category manager, because they're going to say, well, look what operations did. I'm not making my budget because they're not keeping the number one item full on the shelf. We have a common agenda as a brand to sell more, and the category manager wants that item. So let me help you. Let me help you through the data, evaluate where that's happening. And again, that's probably where a distributor can help you too, monitor those situations, right? Monitor where that may be occurring. So I think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, sometimes it's chicken and sometimes it's chickpea. protein.
Right.
One of the questions from the audience was, how is Dom's playing with the plant-based trend?
Yeah. I mean, plant-based, obviously we all know the story and how it's picked up. So we are very dedicated to plant-based and looking at what the other alternative proteins are around the corner, right? There's a lot of other proteins that are work in process. So we dedicate, in a very small store, we dedicate a full refrigerated end cap to plant-based proteins. And then you'll see in the protein department, aka the meat department, and then also in the curated pantry, we've got plant-based items as well. So that's very important, and will continue to be. That's where the shopper's at.
And how do you split, for example, conventional product from plant-based or organic? Do you have all of the milks together and you have cow, goat, almond, soy, and continue that way? So people that are looking for milk find it there? Or do you have a more, is it always separated? I understand an end cap on plant-based protein is great, and that will really drive discovery for anyone that's testing it, the flexitarians, for example.
Yep.
But how do you think about it throughout the store?
Yeah, so in this particular instance, we were making a statement with the end cap, Tina, as you would imagine. But generally speaking, my point of view would be to integrate it into where the shopper's at, right? So if you follow sort of the consumer decision tree, I'm looking for a milk or a milk alternative to put in my coffee or my cereal. Give them the choices where they can see it. All these trends all kind of go through a maturation curve, right? Whether it was generic back in the day or organics, South Beach diet, gluten-free. They sort of start out that way, and the retailer does that to make a statement, but the customer really wants to go to, I'm looking for pasta, what are my choices? I'm looking for protein, what are my choices? And that's kind of where we are.
Thinking about that, Amy had a question. She is in the salts and seasonings category, which is a crowded category in most stores. And so how does she stand out kind of in a sea of other products if she's amongst everything else?
Well, first is you have to have a great product, right? A great product, quality, that's really, that's key. And that sounds very basic, but it's true. Create a great quality product, because in that sea of salty snacks and salsas, we've seen over time where a lot of the brands have, done things to erode the quality, right? The pressure on the CPG brands. So how you can stand out with quality. You can stand out by telling that story like we talked about, Jordan. Can you, as opposed, in your negotiation with that retailer, is there something I can do at the point of sale that really talks about, here's my curated story, here's that helps me stand out. I think the ability, again, to tie in with peers in your network or with other things the retailer's trying to do, not to be redundant, can get you, like in that whole salty snack area, there's a lot of price promotion, low margin activity. How can I have a higher quality product that helps a retailer try to drive their agenda and bring some incremental margin to the category?
So here's a quick thought too. So whenever I talk to other brands and they're pitching to buyers, they always have a slide on promotions, and it usually says, I'm going to do quarterly promotions and I'm going to do demo tables. It's very generic. And so from the buyer merchandiser perspective, have you seen a brand come into like a new store, do a new store launch that has a good strategy? Like, we're going to do, a BOGO for the first 4 weeks. Then quarterly, we're going to do this type of promotion. We'll have shelf talkers that do X, Y, and Z. We'll do this type of in-cap display. Just like I know this is going to vary per brand, but any types of like strategies like that you've seen work really effectively?
Well, probably the most effective is when a brand comes to the retailer and says, I've got X amount of funding to spend for promotion to launch this product. I have 2 or 3 ideas here, but how would you like to launch my brand? How would you like to work with me to develop how to spend? I have $10,000 and I've got 2 ideas how I like to do it, but those are my ideas that I created in isolation. Retailer, tell me what's working in your, in your operation, and then how do we build that together? And to me, that then really the difference there is, Jordan, I'm invested. I'm invested because I helped you create that plan versus you said, I have 3 BOGOs and 1 demo. No. All right. Can you try this thing? We're doing something with, something for children. And I'd like to have your product as part of that. I'd like to give away 200 bars for, children. Okay. And then we'll do the BOGOs and this, and that. The other thing, I think it's, how do we split up that pie? And, that's not, Jordan, that's, not as busy as buyers and category managers doesn't always happen. But I think getting them to buy into the promotional plan versus just laying it out. And they may say, oh, I think that plan is great, but I would give them the opportunity to buy into it, create with you.
I love that. And then someone sent me a message. So they have, let's say, a jam, which is, owned by a certain, category in center store and grocery, a buyer there. And they do want to cross merchandise it with, say, the deli department. But those are 2 different buyers. If you're in with a grocery buyer, what incentive or how do you manage that conversation to say, hey, we would be great in the deli if those are 2 different responsibility areas?
Yeah, that's tough territory to navigate between the 2 of them. I think probably there is where you might want to try to find a way of escalation, right? Where it gets beyond an individual category manager's point of view, because they are fairly myopic. As much as we want them to think about the broader picture, there I think you want to try to get a foothold, create your story. Here's what it's selling. Now, respectfully, category manager for jam or jelly, we'd like to talk to the director of perishables about this product. And I think that's the way to go, because otherwise you're going to get caught in territorialism, Jordan. Once in a while you can thread the needle and get that accomplished, but you have to have somebody who's looking at the broader picture to understand where there's incrementality over here versus, wait a second, you're going to put it over there and I'm going to lose sales in my category, right? So I think that's where you want to escalate in the organization and be a little more strategic than one category manager. You can die on the vine there.
And Don, you've structured DOMS in a different way. The Plant Butcher is the name that you've come up with creatively for your for the salad bar, to use conventional language. And in frozen, you have one of my favorite products, Mason-Dixie biscuits. Talk to us about what you named your different categories and what are shoppers saying when they're walking into a DOMS? Like how are people responding to your baby?
Yeah, well, for the most part, Tina, it's very positive, and I try to not get enamored by the social media or the Progressive Grocer or the Tribune or any. But for the most part, it's been very positive. From their feedback, they like the experience that they're getting. They love the quality of the product and the people. Quite frankly, the people that we hired in the middle of all of the pandemic and the hiring challenges we've had, they really like that that personal touch, right there. So we need to continue that as we grow. I think they're trying to understand how to use this too, right? So that's the double-edged sword of creating something different. And so trying to have them understand that you can use us today to fill up your basket. You can use us tomorrow for your wine and sushi and your friends meet, and you're going to have book club in the front yard, or, you can go over here and get that prepared chicken and go get your Mason-Dixie biscuits and go and put it all together yourself. So for us, it's educating them. We wanted to create this sort of this isn't a grocery store. I'm not sure if it's a restaurant. What is it? We wanted to create that, but part of that is then well, it's now different than some of the brands we're probably talking to here, telling our story and really get people to understand what we're all about.
It kind of reminds me of all the food halls that are popping up. So not too long ago, I was at the Time Out Chicago Market in Chicago, and right, it's like it's just a place to go to get really good food, right? Whether in your case, some of it's prepared, some of it you cook at home, but it's just a place you come to have a really good food experience.
Exactly right. Yep.
Well, perfect. I think the last question as we're filing out, anything from your experience, DOMs or past, that you wish founders or brand owners knew from the retailer perspective? I know we hit on a couple of those points already, but any things that we didn't mention?
I probably would just reiterate, Jordan, to take a metered approach, right? And not try to go for too much too quick, because I've seen that too often, that a really, this is interesting. We're sort of feeling a bit of this ourselves. There's this whole creation, ideation, development stage, and then you get in the real world, right? And this is for us. We created and ideated, and now we're in the real world, and there's a lot of things that happen. So I think for my advice would be, take a metered approach. Don't try to go too big too quick, because you just don't know what you don't know. And go to school for a while. If there's obviously cash flow implications, but where you can, go to school, create your story, create a case study that now you can bring to another retailer, that, hey, here's what happened over here, before you say, oh, I've got 45 stores, and then now the product's not moving and it's shrinking and I'm not getting paid, and they got things going to the reclaim center, and I think that is, as I think about sustainable brands I've seen over time, they've taken that crawl, walk, run approach versus trying to go too big too quick.
Yes, I will echo that. I've often given people the advice that the first 3 retailers that you come into, it might be the product and the differentiation and the founder story. But after that, it is on your results. Retailers 4, 5, and 6 will come from the velocities, how you're supporting it in stores, and continue on. So growth is good, but you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, you listen to the podcast, how I built it, right? And time and again, that's the issue. Oh yeah, I got Oprah to put it on her favorite thing, but how do I do it? Right? It's too much too quick and almost tanks you. It's nice to have it, but now how do I do it? And so, you have to take the shots when they're there, but think about, the longer term viability of your business, obviously.
And then we're almost at the end, but I have to say, the fact that you guys put an entire end cap of products that are in the hatchery is just inspired. The gratitude from the founder community is super high. Thank you for taking a chance on them. And can you tell us a little bit about how that brilliant idea came about?
Well, thank you first for recognizing that. And, we've had a great relationship with the hatchery going back to prior roles. And, so immediately thought about it. But also what we were talking about, being part of the neighborhood, part of the community, is not just on that corner. It's not just selling groceries. It's supporting the community wherever, however we can. And so connecting with the hatchery and their mission to work with entrepreneurs, that's community, and that's what we're about. And so we could not do it, and frankly are anxious to do more, and to your points, get more entrepreneurs in store telling that story. There's nothing like it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Tina and Don, I feel like we could have this conversation go on another hour or so, but alas, we are having to come to a close. I want to thank you so much for being on for this conversation. It was so informative, already getting some great comments in the chat here. For those of you who have further questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and happy to connect you to Don and his team if you have questions about DOMs. As Tina mentioned, she and her team are working on an amazing resource about retail landscape in the Midwest and Chicago. That's going to be amazing value add to every brand listening in terms of who are the retailers who need to launch with first and other stats about them. And we will also have a recording of this conversation that will be sent out via email to everyone. So you'll get a chance to miss anything or to recap anything that you missed. So thanks so much, everyone. Again, have a great rest of your Wednesday and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.